My name is Toni Doman, and I work here at the Birthplace of Country Music. Right now I'm grants coordinator, and my really understanding and definition of old-time music is that it's homemade music. I love that term, homemade music, and it really refers to fiddle banjo music from the Appalachian region, which can be pretty all-encompassing. You know, a lot of the things that I talk about whenever I talk about this music in this region in general is the immigration of people coming into the Appalachian region and settling. And historically, you basically had a really isolated region like that of Appalachia in the mountains. And so there were all these mountains and valleys where people just came in and settled, and they were really isolated from the outside world. And they brought with them their own traditions from where they were coming from, whether that was European, Scots, Irish, Wales, all these places across Europe and beyond, not just Europe. And these people settled in the Appalachian hills and valleys, and the music that came out of that was stemmed from what they brought over, but it also really changed and developed on its own. And so Appalachian music is really all-encompassing. Old-time music, it's very diverse, and it has it's taken on so many things from so many other genres. And personally, I am a big fan of, I guess you would say, genre-free. I think genres can really set up a lot of borders and barriers in music sometimes, and really music in all genres just stems and pulls from so many different things. So yeah, that's my big all-encompassing definition of old-time music. I would rather consider myself as just an ambassador for the Appalachian region, who is working to promote and preserve all the wonderful culture that is here. And I got into playing music back whenever I was in high school, so nobody in my family really plays this music. I grew up in rural West Virginia, but of course that doesn't mean that I'm not haven't been immersed in music. You know, so many people can come to this music from different areas, whether that was just being born into it, like somebody like Martha Spencer, who has it around her at all times and just grew up like that, or to somebody like Trish Four, who we've interviewed as part of this project, who came to it later in life. And I think that old-time music is really welcoming in that sense, because I mean, the music itself just welcomes you in, and it's very inclusive to all skill levels. But I grew up in rural West Virginia on a farm, and I got into playing music. My grandmother used to play piano, church music, and we had square dances out the road from where I grew up. So I started going to those as a teenager, having other friends playing music, and it was just, you know, country dance, old-time tunes, fiddle, banjo, honky-tonk kind of music. So that's really how I got into it, and that I went to college and did a bluegrass music degree program from Glenville State College, and then eventually found my way here. So yeah, I really consider myself a cultural ambassador for the Appalachian region, who's really promoting and preserving all the wonderful things here. And old-time music is one of those things that isn't going anywhere, that's here in the region, that's very inclusive, homemade music. I mean, yeah, that's how I would wrap it up. Genres are, I have a hard time fitting in, I guess, and I think that a lot of people could relate to that. So I play music, but it's not my sole source of income like a lot of people. You know, and for me, it's something that I want to keep fun, because that's how being introduced to this music was for me. It was introduced in a way that was inclusive and a fun thing to do, a very social thing to do. And historically, that's what old-time music and a lot of folk traditions were. You know, people played music socially in their homes. They played them at social gatherings, whether that was a dance or just to pass the time. And I really truly feel that getting back to those roots is important, and you don't have to be a professionally touring musician to be able to come to this music and appreciate it and have a love for it and promote it in a really great way. So genre-free, I guess, would be where I feel like I'm heading. Whenever people ask me what kind of music I play with my husband, we play a duo together, and But yeah, I mean, there's just so much music that I love. I mean, and I always just kind of come back to country and Appalachian is kind of the terms that I tend to use, and even that is pretty loose because I love everything. And yeah, there's that. So I think it's really important to highlight these stories for so many reasons. I mean, one, of course, we hear this a lot talking about like stereotypes of Appalachia. And I don't need to get into the details because I feel like so many people already understand that there are so many negative stereotypes attached to the region. And telling a story like this of just women in old time music is really helping to it's really helping to shift the viewpoint away from some of those negative things that we all hear so much of. You know, I really feel that I've really surrounded myself, and I think a lot of people that are in a professional field might agree, or just in music in some way might agree with this, but when you surround yourself with like-minded people who are kind of working towards the same things you are, like I really feel that I'm working to promote the whole region in a positive way. You don't really hear some of those voices, or you hear less of those negative voices who are telling you negative things about the region. Like I recently was at an event and it wasn't music focused, and everyone at the event was like, I heard a lot of what's the word, talking down about the region, and it was a comedy show, and people were saying like really bad things about like West Virginia and the region, and I just thought, wow, it really hit me that these stereotypes are still very prevalently out there. They're out there all of the time, and whenever, I mean, like I said, I've surrounded myself in a birthplace of country music, all the things that I do for my personal interests or things that I do for work, you know, I'm surrounded by people that are combating these negative stereotypes on their daily work and their effort to make this place a great place. So whenever you get out of that a little bit and you kind of go back into just like the regular public's viewpoint, it was kind of like, oh man, there's still a lot of work to be done to say this place is a really amazing area to live in. And I mean, also just along that line, about a month ago, I got a haircut, and I mentioned to the girl cutting my hair that I was from West Virginia, and she was like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. That must really suck. And I was like, no, listen here, lady. Let me just educate you and tell you about what an amazing place that West Virginia is, and in fact, the entire region. So I feel like I'm always talking to people about how great this place is, and that's something that I also do with my radio program here on Radio Bristol, is just trying to highlight the region in a positive way. And I know that's not exactly what you were asking, but I just feel like anytime I get a chance to say those things, I want to educate people and show them that it's a really great place that has so much to offer, and it's so diverse. And along those lines, this exhibit, especially Women in Old Time Music, is really doing that. It's really highlighting stories that haven't necessarily been told, and what we're doing is really uncovering why those stories might not have been told. So throughout the research of this project, we're finding out, oh hey, you know, men might have just had more opportunities because of society. It was just more welcoming to having a male be a leader. I mean, that's kind of, for me, that's what it seems to always boil back down to, is that whether a man was fronting a band, or the men were usually the ones that were in charge of being promoters or being producers, it seems like that they just had a lot of control, and that their voices were the ones that were shifting the narrative. So it's like all those hidden stories. One thing that we're also talking about is like kind of like the hidden stories of the outliers or the women who didn't necessarily have a chance. It doesn't mean that they weren't playing this music. It doesn't mean that they weren't performing. Maybe they were just performing socially in their homes. Maybe they just never had a chance to be commercially successful. And I think that is the story there. Let's talk about those women who didn't even get the chance, and why didn't they get the chance in the first place. And so as part of being on the content development team for this project, we've really dove really deep into uncovering that, and especially through talking to so many people who all of the women that we're talking to have a voice in old-time music. They are the outliers in a sense. They're the ones that are performing and carrying on the traditions, or they're the ones like Ronnie Stoneman and even Sheila K. Adams that we've spoken with. They're the ones that were living through these times where they were directly affected, or maybe they didn't realize that they were even being affected by the pressure of society, I guess you could say, or the people in charge. So yeah, I mean, it's so important because it's a piece of American history. It's a piece of history in music, and I really hope that we can move forward and be even more inclusive and reach a better place for everyone, and more space at the table, I guess, so to say. I hear that term a lot, but it's so true. I mean, there's space at the table for everyone, and especially in old-time music. My grandmother was a big inspiration for me. Like I mentioned, she played piano, so there was a piano in her home, which was right next door to mine. And so that's really how I got introduced to music in general. Like I said, nobody really played music growing up, unless you count my dad playing the trombone, but I don't really count that for as far as being an influence. But yeah, my grandmother played music, and we, of course, she went to church, so I went to church with her and heard hymns. And one of her best friends was a honky-tonk piano player in her heyday who ended up playing in church also, that we went to. And her name was Lucille Hartley. My grandmother's name was Helen Doman. And yeah, like they would pal around and play music together just in her home. And, you know, that was just like, through that there were songbooks laying around all the time. And whether that's just an old country hymn book, you know, I would flip through that and try to figure it out on piano, or, you know. So, well, having that familiar connection with music is a great way for people to just be introduced to it. You know, some people don't have that, and I really don't feel like I had an influence that was really like physical in my space. But the great thing about my generation, so I'll be 30 this year, people my age and younger have a really amazing resource at their fingertips, and that's just the internet. So people can learn this music without ever really having someone to teach them in their space, because I can go on the internet and look up old recordings of a song and learn it to the T from, you know, Albert Hash, whoever that is, like whoever that master person is. I can go online and easily find that. And I think that that's really interesting in this day and age. So I'm particularly interested in technology and how technology can help spread resources, especially, so music. And that's, you know, you don't necessarily have to sit down with a teacher anymore. You can sit down with a teacher virtually, and I think that's amazing when you really think about it. And I know that sometimes people are maybe wondering where music will be in the future, especially these old traditions that come from this region, like old-time music or bluegrass or any of these folk traditions. People are kind of constantly sounding like, or feeling as though these traditions might disappear. Who's going to carry them on? And you always hear about education. Of course, things that they do here at the Birthplace of Country Music, like the pick-along summer camps, are directly in line with keeping those traditions alive. But I also don't think that they're going anywhere. I used to maybe feel that they were going to be under threat of like disappearing. But I don't think that way anymore. I think that just there's so many people being drawn to this music that are performing it regularly, that are interested in it, that it's not going anywhere. And it's continually being adapted by new musicians, younger people. And you don't even have to be younger to get into it and make it your own. You know, I hear that, like, we're always talking about the youth and how they're going to come along and promote it and preserve it and carry it on. And that's great, but you don't have to be a youth to get into music and preserve it and learn it. My best friend, her grandfather learned how to play guitar when he was 60 years old and played until he died. I mean, like, that's a great story, you know? And yeah, like, I hope that maybe one day I can learn how to play the fiddle. I mean, I got my whole life ahead of me. Talk to me in 30 years. You know, it's okay, because there's time, and you don't, you know, if you're interested in it and you like it, you can learn it. And the great thing now is about all those resources are just at your fingertips. And another thing about just technology and music that I find interesting is that there are so many, I mean, historically, just look at this music. You've got influences from Ireland, Wales, England, Africa. I mean, old-time music has its roots pulled from across the world. And now that we are in a day and age where everything is at our fingertips, information is right there, we don't really have to rely on geography anymore to find new influences. You know, we're so lucky in this day and age to have so much music at our fingertips that I'm so fortunate to be able to like all kinds of music. It's not just what I could have got my hands on in a record store at one point. It's, hey, I have a friend that likes this. Oh, wow, I really like that sound, but I really like this sound. Oh, wow, cool. Like, you can just share and learn so much. And then because we have access to all this different kinds of music, I think that it's really starting to affect, like, the new music sounds that we're hearing. You know, here at this institution, there's a band called Twisted Pine, and there's a flute in this string band. And if that didn't, I don't want to use the word upset, but what's the word? If that didn't rattle some people thinking, oh, well, you can't have a flute in a string band. Well, you can, and it sounds incredible. And just having all of these different sounds come together, it's amazing. And that's another thing where I talk about the, like, genre-free aspect. It's just another resource. We're just pulling so many influences from so much right now that it's amazing. And if you're gonna adapt this music and move it forward into a sound that you've never heard before, then, like, that's what people are doing, and that's how it survives. And that really doesn't affect the roots of where it came from at all. It's always been adapted. It's always been continually adapted and influenced by different sounds. And so I think it always will be. And I think that that's what's so great about it. And so when you have really hard-driven traditionalists, which is valid. I mean, I understand not wanting to change the way things have been done, but I think you're always going to have that. You're always going to have that with a new generation. I mean, I don't know where my generation will be in 30, 40, 50 years. I don't know what they will be upset about with new sounds. Maybe they'll want maybe they'll still want a flute and all the string bands. Who knows? Like, you know, but I think that just being open and understanding that this music is going to change and it's going to be adapted, it doesn't affect where it came from, is really important. You know, so like I mentioned, I come from, I guess, academically and musically, I've come from more of a bluegrass background. So I have a degree in four-year degree in traditional bluegrass music from Glenville State College, which is now Glenville State University, which they've transitioned their bluegrass program to an Appalachian Studies degree program. But yeah, the great thing about this music is that so many musicians are still alive and living, and so you have the opportunity to go seek those individuals out and learn from them. Unlike, I mean, you can't necessarily do that with all genres. You can't go backwards in time and be Beethoven's intern, okay? Like, that's the wonderful thing about this music, is that if you want to go and find those people, you can, and you can learn from them firsthand. And again, if you can't learn from them firsthand because they're no longer with us, you can use YouTube, you can use the internet, and that's wonderful. For me personally, through just doing a college music program, I was definitely able to be around a lot of great musicians and individuals, and I don't even want to name names or leave anybody out, but just having those outlets, I think is really great for people that are going through similar programs, which there are so many similar music programs right now. I mean, you have ETSU, Berea College. I don't even want to name anymore because I don't want to leave any out, but there are so many, I guess you would say, I'll use the word Appalachian focused, like music programs out there right now in an academic college setting. So anytime you go through like an institution like that, you're really being connected to so much more. So yeah, but personally, I can't think of like actual, like, let's see, I probably can. I don't know. I feel like I don't have, I really haven't had I've had a lot of opportunities to speak and connect with individuals in this music, not necessarily like playing with them on it, like musically, but definitely working with so many different individuals in the area, talking about this music or doing programs about it. So well, I think just what I was saying about a little earlier, just about being like a cultural ambassador for the region is really my focus and mission. So I think that pretty much summed that up pretty well. But I don't really consider myself an innovator because my focus is less on performing and more on like education and preserving and promoting the region as a whole. So that's really my career aspirations and focus, and so I try to keep that mindful with all the things that I'm doing, and I'm just really fortunate to be in this position. Being associated with Birthplace of Country Music is a great outlet to do that, but yeah, that's like my career mission is just becoming a cultural ambassador, and doing that through talking to people, doing that through working with people, meeting people. That's really how I want to achieve that. But as far as like just to touch on innovators, I guess I pretty much, I talked about that too, like people adapting, but I just think that, yeah, it's nothing to be fearful of, adapting and making your own sound, because the things that we're listening to, the things that interest me musically are not things that I've heard before, generally speaking. I mean, of course, I love old time music, I love bluegrass, I love country music, I love all of these different styles. But the things that I find interesting are sounds that I haven't heard before. And I think that that's pretty much always been prevalent in at least a commercial industry, is what is successful, something you haven't heard before, something you haven't seen before. And so when we're talking about like the women of old time music, it's interesting that they weren't as successful, or their stories weren't as prominent commercially. It took a long time before women to be really successful, except for those outliers who we talk about in the exhibit. And I think that that's interesting, because you would kind of think that women playing, like a woman playing a banjo, that's not something that like record producers were recording, and that's not something that they were playing on their barn dance shows. I mean, Ronnie Stoneman couldn't even win a banjo contest, okay? Kathy Fink didn't even get credit. She got credit in a newspaper as the West Virginia State Folk Festival for winning the banjo contest. It's so interesting that a story like women playing music was so not interesting, because it wasn't being commercialized. It wasn't out there. So yeah, I think that's pretty interesting in that sense. You just find yourself in this role of like mentor, and that's another great way to pass traditions along, or just to pass your own knowledge along. But I don't think that you necessarily have to be a certain age to be a mentor either. Like, everyone can work and make steps towards making the whole entire region a welcoming place that, you know, like musicians and individuals can thrive in. Everyone can make steps to be an educator. It doesn't matter if that's just me teaching you how to play a tune that I learned, or me sharing a song with you that you haven't, that I think is really great that you haven't heard before. You know, everyone can, it's just that interaction. It's just, those are how things are passed down. Those are how our traditions are preserved. Those are how things are adapted. So anytime people are doing that, I mean, you don't necessarily have to have 50 years of experience to feel like you're not educating someone, you know. It's the small things too that really add up. Yeah, so this is a great question because all women have challenges in not just music, but just in life. And for me, just talking about the music, so I came to, like I mentioned, I came to start playing this music and be involved in it probably whenever I was about 15, 16 years old. You know, I got my first guitar, learned how to play it on my own with a DVD. I didn't have a guitar teacher until I went to college. And so, but you can learn a lot on your own. And this is really before the internet, because I wasn't looking at YouTube videos. I had a DVD and I watched this guy with a beard just like tell me how to play G. So, and it was fun and I liked it, and I just really wanted to learn at that time. So I learned how to play chords, and that really just like sparked my interest in this music. And I say this music as in like all of this music, not just old time, bluegrass, country, that whole world, folk world. But I went to college and was like, okay, I really like guitar. I can play chords. I've been playing at square dances. Like I've been singing with some friends. Like it's fun. I'd really like to take like real lessons, you know, like actually have some, like a instructor tell me what to do instead of just watching videos. At this point I was using YouTube. So whenever I got to that point and I got involved playing in a bluegrass band on campus, and I automatically felt so much imposter syndrome within my life in music that it's just ridiculous at this point. I mean, and I think that phrase imposter syndrome, I think that we've all experienced it, not just women. I think it's easy to fall into that, to feel like you're not good enough because you're seeing other people who are so far ahead of you. That for me, it was all guys, all men who were the ones that in the bluegrass band that were taking breaks, that were really strong at their instrument, that were taking leads, that were singing. And I came into it as, I'm here to learn, and these people are clearly on a different level already. But that's okay that there was different people at different levels. There is always going to be that. So, but for me, just like initially having that imposter syndrome, like, I don't know what I'm doing. Like I'm just not that good. You know, I'm just the girl back here that I just play rhythm guitar. No big deal. Don't mind me. Like, you guys are the real musicians. I felt that so much in my life that now that I'll be 30 this year, I'm like trying to get out of it. And it's taken a long time to really get out of it. And I think that a lot of that really has to do with just feeling like you're just the girl that plays rhythm guitar. Don't, like, it's fine. And if there's only one guitar in the show tonight, like, I'm stressed because that other guy plays rhythm a little bit better than I do. And it's really taken a lot of years. And I guess with imposter syndrome, you can start to feel a little bit burned out of music too. And so I've felt all of those feelings. But now I think just having those experiences, which they're definitely a little bit negative, having those experiences and almost being told that you're not that good, not directly, but you know that feeling. We're gonna skip her because she doesn't take breaks. Like, we're all playing a song, we're practicing, we're having a good time. don't even bother looking over and asking this woman, girl, to take a break because she can't do it. I felt that so much. And it's like whenever you latch on to someone who is giving you an opportunity, and that can be silent. You could be at a jam at a festival. I'm talking a lot about bluegrass here more so because that's my experience. But you could be at a jam, and once you latch on to someone who is like looks at you and says, okay, why don't you try that? Like, just go ahead and try. And you do it, and it's like, hey, great job. Like, keep at it, you know? Like, it's like you have those little moments that for me felt very few and far between, but you latch onto them and you realize that, okay, like, you can do it, you know? And I think that just finding a mentor or finding someone who believes in you, as cheesy as that sounds, or believes that you're capable is just vital. And the more that you know, there's always going to be people at different stages musically. If you do play music, there's always going to be people at different stages. And I've just learned to just, you know, you like the music, there's room for everybody. It doesn't matter what level you're on. If you like it, there's a space for you. And you should be inspired by those people who are really good, you know. And it's taken me a long time to get used to that, just because I've just been told that you can't do it so much. And then once you hear you're not good enough so much, you kind of start to believe it. So it really wasn't until I got out of and I'm not saying that my entire academic, like being in a bluegrass band, was negative. I'm just talking, these are all general experiences that I've felt along the way of playing music since being about 15. It really wasn't until just a few years ago when I started playing with my husband that I felt like I could actually be a little bit stronger and wanted to learn more and wanted to practice. And yeah, and so now I try, and every time I hear like seeds of doubt, I guess, about being an imposter in my brain, I just try to be like, hear them and just let it go. Like, namaste, like you're in yoga class. Like, everyone's gonna feel that way, but maybe more people feel it than others. But I think that I can't put myself in shoes if I was a different gender, but I definitely feel a lot of that. That's a huge challenge, is that, oh, you can't do that, so like being skipped at jam is the big thing. Also, I've also experienced people being in total awe that you can play a guitar, which is baffling. Like, wow, you can really do that. For a girl, I mean, she took a break. That was really good. And it's like, again, yep. Yeah, and that's really what this exhibit really is uncovering, is all of those hidden stories that we were just talking about. And I think that really, just generally speaking, that it boils down to just a few things, just that men were in charge of the airwaves in a sense when we're talking about the commercial success of women being old-time women, women who are playing old-time music being successful commercially. Is that just there? Is that men were the ones that were making the decisions, and that's nobody's fault but society's, I think, just in general terms. Whenever like barn dance radio was becoming popularized, you can go back and look at just the early stars and how they were told what to play, they were told what to wear. They were not really writing their own songs. Someone was writing them for them and handing it to them and saying, here, dance monkey dance. So like, it's just that it just boils down to who was in charge. And it's taken a lot of years and a lot of missed opportunities for women to be in charge and for women to actually be in those roles where they are the ones making decisions, not just for themselves, because throughout this exhibit we're featuring a lot of women who in different stages, like the early barn dance radio women who were just doing what I just said, who were just being handed information and being told exactly what to do and exactly what to sound like. But then you have, on the country side of things, you have people like Loretta Lynn who were singing about really risque topics like the pill, you know, and that was a big shift in who kind of has the who's writing their own songs. You know, what are they writing about? Women really have their own set of issues that differs from men. Of course, men have issues that differ from women, but women weren't really allowed to sing about those issues or really allowed to have an outlet to talk about those issues until time has passed for them to be in roles where they're allowed to make decisions, whether that's for themselves or whether that's, you know, a woman being able to women who are DJs who are allowed to pick the music that they want to listen to. I remember one time whenever I was probably a preteen, my cousin was listening to the radio, and we were listening to a country radio station locally, and we were like, I wonder if we'll hear any girl singers. And it would be like Alan Jackson, Tim McGraw, or whoever was on. And then it was like, oh, a girl, like, okay, cool. And then it'd be guy. And I don't really think that, and that's pop country, that's mainstream, mainstream at least what's commercialized at this time and, you know, a few years ago. But there's still a long way to go. And I hear that with all of the women that we've talked to as part of putting this exhibit together. We've come a long way, but I still think that if you listen to mainstream country, you're probably not going to hear a lot of female voices. I don't really know I don't know. It's just, it feels like there's still a long way to go. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, so this is another great question, and I think that anything that we can do to educate, so the thing about an exhibit is that it's standing still, right? It's something that's in a single place at a single time. Traveling the exhibit is a great thing that we're planning to do, but it's like creating things beyond the exhibit, and I don't really know what those things are other than just partnerships. And I worry about, at least I worry about going to, like any museum. You can go to any museum and experience an exhibit and feel very inspired and feel, maybe you could even feel that you need to take action in some sense, depending on the content of the exhibit. So my feelings are people coming here and being really inspired by hearing some of these uncovered stories that they haven't heard before about women in old time music, and then what are they going to do? What are they going to do next? So for me, it's like really thinking about that and coming up with a plan on how they could learn more later. And one way I think is definitely to do what we're planning to do and take some things online and have some resources there where you can go learn more. Because for me, going to a museum is sensory overload. You know, I'm reading, I'm learning, I'm having a great time. I'm so excited to be in this new town and place. I haven't been to this museum before, wherever it is. And then as soon as I leave, I'm thinking about all these things. Like, I'm thinking about the mummy that I saw at the Virginia Fine Arts Museum recently. But then what am I doing after that? I'm just thinking about it. So anything that we can do to create action is, I think, vital. And I think maybe even creating opportunities beyond the exhibit, like opportunities for people to gather and connect, whatever that might be. Opportunities for you to meet someone, to establish a great connection with, so that you can, maybe that person can become a mentor. Any way to establish those real connections beyond just a single stationary exhibit, I think is the best thing to do. And again, I don't really know what those things are, but that's where my mind goes when I think, because I've been thinking about this question a lot. And yeah, like I think that that's creating those relationships that are gonna exceed this space and time is how to move things, or is how to keep things, how to keep the information that you're learning fresh and like apply it, I guess. like making sure that we don't go backwards any more than we already have, I think is vital. Especially everyone has pretty much talked about education when we talk about this question and ask this question, but I agree with it as well, but really just going further than that. When I think of education, I tend to just default back to youth, but I don't think that youth is always, while it's important, again, you can have education at every stage in your life, and something like playing old time music, there's so many examples of people learning when they're older and doing music when they're older, and I think that's important to not forget about adult learning. People should care about this music because, like I mentioned a little earlier, it's not going anywhere. It's here to stay. It's never going to go anywhere, and you can't just erase the past because of whatever new innovative thing is coming or is going to come, or you can't be fearful of the future for sure. You can always go back to your roots and look and learn and listen, and I think that that's important. Look how far we've gone. Yeah, exactly. Look how far we've gone backwards just in the past 5-6 years. It's shocking, and it's anger-inducing on a social scale for so many reasons. So whenever you think what's happening socially and politically out there, of course, music seems like this entertaining pastime, but music has always reflected what's going on politically and socially since there was music. I feel like that maybe that's a bold claim, but at least in the 20th century, 19th century, 21st century, it's just like, look at Woody Guthrie singing about political and social songs. You can't have a old time, or at least a bluegrass tune that doesn't talk about a train somewhere. But why are we talking about trains? Because people were riding trains. There were trains all over the place. That's a thing that we will never experience here as just 21st century American citizens. We can sing about it. We can play songs about it. We can even write new songs. There's a lot of new songs that I hear written, and whenever I hear lyrics about a train, it's like that. Some people have experienced that here and now, but it's not like it was before I was born, 100 years ago when trains were cars. So it's like also that relevance in subjects, in songs at least. Sometimes I remember I had a conversation once in college about, is it not appropriate, for loss of words on that word, is it realistic for this young man to sing about an experience that he's never had by singing these old tunes and songs? And I think, well, it's realistic to perform it, but maybe they will never really truly understand the lyrics. Like, you can imagine them, but you didn't live through it. And the people who were writing these songs lived through it, like the Carter family. Of course, there were more song catchers, but you know what I'm saying. So yeah. Yeah, and again, I don't really want to just like ramble names and leave anybody out or exclude anybody, but I think the future is now. No, I think the future is, it's going to come whether you're ready for it or not, and all the innovators are the people who are, the innovators seem to naturally be successful in the past, so I can't imagine that they wouldn't be in the future. And again, pulling all those different sounds, innovators have always been people who have pulled different sounds and created different sounds that weren't really heard yet. In all genres, in all music. Bluegrass wasn't a thing, until it was created. Jazz, okay, like very big, broad genres, but it's going to happen whether you're ready for it or not, and it's not a bad thing. It's not. So I think that the future of old time music is always going to be here, and even if it's even if it changes dramatically in the next 100 years, which it will, it absolutely will change dramatically. Again, those roots are not going anywhere, and people are always going to be able to learn from them. I mean, even when you look at this museum and all of the influences that the 1927 sessions have and continue to have, and the impact that it continues to have, I mean, it's still very prevalent to modern musicians and people who are making new music. So whether that's new music or playing old traditional tunes, yeah, I think of course it's going to be impacted, but I think asking if it's going to be a negative or a positive impact is kind of feels, I don't know, silly, feels like a silly word to use there, but it's going to be impacted, and people just can't hang on to what they feel is the right formula for a genre, because it's always changing. And I just want to remind people that music is always changing, no matter what genre. Genre is a loose word, it's a marketing word, it's genre free is how we all should be. Really, and once you realize that a little more, maybe everyone can just get back to just enjoying what they like.